we left off with is that a person shouldn't be like a shtickler, always, being exacting on every single thing. Rather, he should give a little bit more than exacting and take the lesser portion for himself. So, the example that I gave was if he's a store owner, rather than taking back 5 or 10 grams because it's so you can leave it on the tray. Like sometimes you see them and others take in 100, 100. You want 100, right? So they put out 150, so they take back a little bit more and they leave you 110. I mean, it's not like I'm looking to get the 10. But I'm just saying he's taking back, right? He could take back more, and some do. They'll take back and they'll leave you with less. So it's just again, what he's saying here is, you should be, err on the more generous side of things, and it applies not only, like I was suggesting, with monetary matters, but in relationships with people. There might be a discussion, there might be an argument, there might be, you're making a point. Some people, they have to be exacting that you understand exactly what they mean, and they have to make sure that you, accept exactly what they're saying. And even if you feel like you're in the right, you don't necessarily. Sometimes you have to be exact for whatever reason, but more often than not, it's enough that the person gets the gist of what you're saying, or I'm saying, assuming you're right, it's enough that the person basically accepts what you're saying. Even if they have some reservation about 1 or 2 or 3 fine points, you have to run it down their throat. You have to make sure that they absolutely accept everything that you say, unconditionally, and admit to being wrong on every single point you're accusing of. So, somebody wronged you, somebody slighted you. You can express yourself and say, I was concerned for X, Y, and Z reasons, and so forth and so on. The person said, okay, I can see what you mean. I'm not sure, but okay. So some people say, all right, thanks. So things will be good between us. We understand one another. Another person say, what do you mean? You think I'm right? I may be right. It's not obvious to you. Like these are pressing the point. Give the guy an opportunity to save some face. He probably agrees with you, but people are people. So he says, I hear what you're saying. Generally, I agree with you. I don't know if I agree on every single point, but what point? What point don't you agree with? Let's argue point by point. Right? That's what one person will say. Another will say, okay, look. I'm generally right. I got my point across. Right? He says he doesn't agree with me on every single point. He might agree with me. He's trying to save face. Or even if he doesn't, who's to say I'm entirely right? At least I'm generally right. And if these 1 or 2 or 3 points become an issue sometime in the future, so we can address them, if it ever becomes, practically relevant. Cut the guy some slack. You gotta. So this is the type of thing I mean. Not just in money matters. And, in many different things. Right? Your children, you give your children your task to do, and they generally do what you wanted them to do, but not exactly the way you wanted it, or exactly the time frame that you wanted them. So if it's not critical, then why ram it down their throats? Be an oppressive tyrant to your children. You have to do exactly what I say. Exactly what I say. They're children. Children, give a break. Again, sometimes, it needs to be done in a better way. But in those cases, perhaps you shouldn't be asking your children to do it. And if it's an area where you need your children or expect them to do it for whatever reason, so you have to take in consideration that, like everybody, I think children are also human beings, I think. Yeah? So, you can't, on every little thing, and some people like that, sticklers, like everything's got to be exactly, You want to be like that? If there's a Havamina, the answer would be yes. You know who to direct it towards? Yourself. You want to be like that? Do it to yourself, but not to other people. Right? People are so demanding, like how they would be as demanding of themselves as they are of other people. It often goes like that. It's double standard. They expect everything from everybody except themselves. You want to be that way? You can do it again. You do it towards yourself. But other people, you have to be a little more liberal, a little more open, a little less demanding. It's very important. That's part of generosity. A person should also be generous with his body to make effort on behalf of other people. To suffer their burden, the responsibility that he might have to them, and to feel anguish over their anguish, and to pray for them in their difficulties, and to feel joy in their times of joy, which is also not always easy. It's very easy for a person to be full of joy on his own joyous occasions, expecting everybody in the world to come to his wedding and to come to his bris and everything else. But when it comes to be going to other people's weddings, I got something to do. I'm gonna, right? If a person can be, 100th of happy in other people's weddings as is in his own, that would be a great thing. It's sometimes it's difficult, and one should try and take upon himself the ability to be joyful in other people's joyous occasions. Levakir holim, to visit the sick, and to fulfill the needs of the dead, in terms of burial and things like this. And all the more so, a person has to be generous regarding his Torah knowledge and share that with others. L'lamed l'chol adam, to teach every person da'as, u'lahamshich es libam neshamayim, teach them the knowledge of the Torah and to draw their hearts towards heaven. V'zeu anadivus hagadoila shebekol mine anadivus. This is the greatest degree of generosity among all. Hamisnadev la'odam lahaviyah l'chayo ilam. Somebody who volunteers to help bring his friend, to bring someone else to the world to come, meaning inspire another person with spirituality. Afal pi shemidas and adivos hitoiva, even though generosity in general, of course, is a very good attribute. Like all other attributes which are good, he points out that there is a negative, positive, negative manifestation as well. He has to be careful not to be a spendthrift, not to waste his money, and certainly not on things which are unnecessary, food and drink, buying Coke and cake and potato chips and all of this stuff. It's not healthy. You just waste your money on it. And spend all types of money buying things all the time, or buying or ordering clothing which is above average in their cost. Simple, straightforward clothing. Or spending his money in all other types of ways which aren't going to bring him to Yirat Shamayim. Going to the movies, going to baseball games, or football games. What time of football, I suppose, depends on what country you're in. And a person who is generous of heart has to be careful not to waste his money that way. And he has to be careful also not to be running after these types of things which only bring bad, evil, waste. But he should be simultaneously generous to the poor in order to clothe them and feed them with good things. It says, Kol chelev laHashem. All fats should be given to God. Meaning, right, when you're going to give to God, in this case, give to the poor who are like the needy of God, then one should give them of superior quality. That's interesting. I've never actually heard this idea before, although I've read the book before. I guess I don't remember. But I would have thought it would be enough to say, don't give poor people things of inferior quality, rather give them the things that you yourself should have. And here we're being told the things that you should acquire for yourself should be of average value, nothing too outlandish, nothing too extravagant. But he's saying, no, when you're giving to the poor, fulfilling the mitzvah of tzedakah, you should actually give them of the good, the fat, the fatty portions, which means more, which implies things which are more opulent, of a higher standard or grade than you would be encouraged to buy for yourself. That's what he's saying here. I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought the point is, I don't say because he's got nothing, he should be thankful for what I give him, even if it's only secondary quality because it's more than he's got. No, give him, spend more money. Don't give him secondary. Give him the, or third, whatever. Give him like everybody else has, so he shouldn't be embarrassed. But why should he? I don't understand why you should give him more. Buy the poor person clothing which is more expensive than yourself and everybody else is encouraged to wear? I don't know, but that's what he seems to be saying. He says, "V'la'achilam mina meitav," from the good stuff. Like it says, "Kol chaylev la'Hashem." Unless what he means by the good stuff means the stuff which is good for everybody, meaning the average stuff. But that doesn't mean the prime. I don't think that's what he means, though. God will give great reward to people who do this. We find that the sons of Adam brought sacrifices to God, right? Cain and Hevel brought sacrifices to God, and we're told that Cain brought of the fruits and vegetables, the produce of the land, because he was like a farmer, and Hevel brought the choicest of his sheep, his herds for God. And we find that God, with a seeming act of favoritism, accepts the sacrifice of Hevel, and not that of Cain. Right? So Cain gets all upset, and Hashem says, like, what are you all upset about? Right? Improve your ways, and I'll accept yours too. Well, what's the problem? What, he should be penalized because he's a farmer? And he should be rewarded because he's a herdsman? What does that have anything to do with it? He's a farmer, so he brought what was valuable to him. And he's a herdsman, he brought what was valuable to him. Why would God favor the one over the other? God needs fats more than ears of corn. He doesn't need animal fat, and he doesn't need corn. So why did he accept this and not the other? What's going on there? So Chazal note, Rashi brings it, of course, in Chumash, the difference in language regarding both. That regarding the sacrifices were the offering of Cain, it says that he brought of the fruits of the field. He brought of his produce. But regarding Hevel, it says that he brought the choicest. He brought the choicest. In which we see that Cain looked at his produce and said, I want to bring something to God, but clearly that stuff, that would not be nice to bring. That's all rotten. That stuff, that's really good. I kind of want to keep that for myself, so I'll give God that stuff. He brought, like, the lesser quality, more of an inferior quality of stuff. So it's not like God preferred the animal offering more than the vegetable, than the produce offering. The point is, in what way did you bring it? He brought the best of what he's got, and he intentionally didn't bring the best of what he's got. That was what was God. Everybody has different things. Some people have more, some people have less. The main thing is to give the best of what you've got. If the best of what he's got is worth X, and the best of what he's got is worth X minus a lot, but each one is bringing the best of what he's got, so in God's eyes, it doesn't matter whether it's a lot or a little, it's the best of what you've got. You give the best of what you've got. So maybe that's what it's referring here to as well. The fats, meaning, right, the best, what's appropriate, what should be given, what should be done, that you should give them. And not give inferior stuff just because he's a poor person. Would you wear it? If you wouldn't wear it, so why give it to him? Because he wears rags and you don't? But you want him to feel like everybody else, right? So give him what's considered to be appropriate for everybody else. Don't give him second quality just because he's a poor person. On the contrary, that's what Cain did, right? When Cain was giving to God, he gave him of secondary importance. That's my point here. Maybe that's how we should understand the author. Not that he's telling us that we should give the person better than everybody else, but he should give what you're expected to give to God. You should give to him. Don't give less. Cain gave less, and you see what happened. That's wrong. That would be wrong. Unless he really means you should be giving more to the poor person, but I'm less inclined to think that's the case. I have a story recently. I mean, it was actually, I write the Ask the Rabbi column for Or Sameach's kind of, Torah Weekly, Ask the Rabbi. And somebody submitted a question not too long ago about an organization that helps subsidize weddings for poor people. I think the question was specifically for orphans. And the organization apparently spends a lot of money in making these weddings for the orphans on a standard which is higher than the average person in the community has. They spend apparently a lot of money on getting like the best band, the best hall, very good food. And the person who wrote the question was questioning whether that's right. Because it's one thing to take care of the orphans. Presumably, they're not only emotionally but financially needy, and if they, after an interview, seem to be deserving of the charity, why not? They don't have parents to help them or going to debt for them or anything else. But to give them weddings which are more lavish than everybody else, that seemed wrong. I forgot about this question the person had submitted. The person wanted to know whether I agree that whether that was correct. Should the organization be marrying off these orphans in such a lavish way, which is even more than average regular people in the community? And I guess the second point of the question was they could probably marry off another orphan or two, right, with the same, if they cut back on expenses. So it seemed to me that the organization must feel like if they are making themselves available to help orphans, they're probably going to help every orphan they can. They don't turn them away. So the budget must be that they can help everybody on a high level without turning anybody away. Obviously, if their intention was to help needy orphans, they would not, I don't know the organization, I have no idea, but let's just be rational, right? Logical. They're not going to be lavish on some to the exclusion of others. So clearly their budget must be working out in a way that they take everybody and they provide the same. You've got to assume that. So that's not, I don't think that's a question. The real question is just, is it right to, give them that type of a wedding? So, I guess my answer was that they can do that. Whether they have to or not, I don't know, but I guess they can do it. And maybe it has to do with giving them such a nice wedding that in some small way that might compensate for all of the suffering that they've had until that point as orphans. And maybe give them a special feeling, like their wedding really is a special wedding, particularly a bride, So, if I answer that then, I guess it might be applicable here as well. The poor person suffers so much, so if you're going to help him, you can help him in a way which is even more than other people, and maybe that would make up in some way for the suffering and the feeling of what's the word I'm looking for, of inferiority vis-a-vis the rest of the people, so that now he's actually able to look nicer than many people. That might not, that might compensate for his inferiority complex or something. So maybe it would be appropriate in that case. I remember regarding that story, that question. I recalled a story about without going into all the details right now of the story, but there was a certain rabbi who was called the Rabbi of Orphans, and he was very careful to hire very good bands at the weddings or other things which would make it a very special wedding. And he made a point of coming to each of the weddings of the orphans. This was and dancing and so forth and so on. The particular wedding, he was like in an ecstatic state of joy, dancing with the groom at one of these weddings, an orphan groom, and in this kind of state of ecstatic joy, he shouted out that he would very much like that he be buried to the accompaniment of such music, which ultimately happened. He was actually buried to the accompaniment of wedding music. Did you hear right down there? Yeah. So I guess the point of the story was, you see that he was justified in providing this very, special music, specifically in the honor of the groom and the bride who were orphans, even if it was more than most people had. So I guess there is precedent for this type of a thing. What were you going to say?
I want to give an example.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you feel bad.
Go ahead.
So let's say I have like $25,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how much I would personally pay for an average sweater or a jacket to keep me warm during the winter. What this is saying is that for the poor person, I should buy that same sweater.
Or even more.
Or even more.
Yeah.
However,
if you have the money, if you don't have the money, it's a different story. We're talking about charity, yeah. Yeah.
But there's not usually one poor person. There's more. There's five. And the cheap sweaters for $5. Why should I get one sweater for $25 when I can clothe all these five poor people in my vicinity?
If the $25 sweater is really, let's say, more than a person needs to keep himself warm, it's got some style to it, or some.
Buy myself
$5.
The cheap $5 sweater that's gonna make me look, a little bit like a clown,
So then I guess according to this, if in the public eye wearing such a sweater would kind of look like a clown.
Studies Torah, like a sweater that says like Thug Life on it. For example, I don't know, like something that's not of the quality of someone who's studying Torah and believes in God and walks around and gives that impression is not really good to have to wear, But does a poor person really do that?
So we're talking about like let's say for example, a person would buy a $25 sweater and that would be like a name brand.
Name brand, something like a jacket or
nice nice, sporty looking, right? Look attractive, right?
Really cheap for something that's savage.
Okay, so
there's nothing too low.
Okay, so again, the one is like a name brand. It might be a little bit stylish, and the person looks at, wow, that's sharp. That's a nice sweater. It's an eye gag. Gains attention. Yeah. So if you have a sweater, it does the job. So a person is kind of, I don't know, maybe in the first case, he's dressing up more than he really has to. But if that's what everybody does, that's the standard, then according to this, he should give the poor person the same standard. Otherwise, he's standing out as a poor person.
But then you're only
giving 1 out of 5. Yeah, but
is it better to give more to one, or
we saw earlier you should give less to more than more to one. We saw that, right? Yeah, that's for the benefit of giving, right? For the benefit of giving. But here you give. What's that? Yeah, but he's explaining resolving the contradiction by saying, giving 1 to 100 is better than giving 100 to 1 in terms of the act of giving. You are giving 100 times. We said yesterday, what about the other 99 that he needs, or everybody? So what I suggested is, if everybody gives 1 to 100, so ultimately everybody who needs will get the 100, because one is being given by 100, but each one is giving 100 times. So everybody's going to benefit. The recipient is receiving all of it needs from more people. So I guess I might say the same thing here as well. That here you're talking about not the benefit the giving will do for me, but the good of what he's actually receiving. If we're required to give the person what everybody else has, yes. So then I guess it would be better to give more to one, and regarding the others, other people will give those what he needs.
Okay.
Yeah. That being said, if you're talking again about getting something which is really more like a specialty item, it's quite expensive, and even if a lot of people have that type of a thing, because it's a relatively affluent society, this person doesn't have that, or there are several people who are poor and don't have anything. So it probably would be better to give them something less expensive than most people wear, as long as it's something which is going to make them look like, like a scarecrow. It's a fine line, but you kind of have to, I guess, estimate how expensive is what everybody's wearing vis-a-vis what's could still be considered tasteful. But if it would make the person a mockery, so that would be a problem. Yeah, okay, but I'm just saying.
$5 sweater that will close,
Yeah, but it might not last very long. It might not last very long. It might be very thin. It might be, whatever. And maybe it would be better to give the person the money instead. Because if you give him the sweater, what's he going to do with it? Right? But you could say to him, I'd really like to help you buy, a nice sweater so you're warm and everything. It's, here's, $5 or $10. I'd like to give you towards the sweater. So let him decide. If he wants the $5 sweater, he'll buy it. If he'd rather you buy the $25, so it'll help him at least save $10 on it. That might be a better way of doing it. That might be one solution to the problem you're raising. You're raising a very good point. I suppose that would be a possible solution. Of course, when you give the sweater, it's more maybe it's more like a gift, so the person feels less maybe uncomfortable, as it were, about receiving charity. On the other hand, in this scenario, that might be compensated by the fact that you're at least enabling him to buy, a better sweater if he wants, but you can't afford to give him that much. Or, alternatively, you might speak to a few people. It seems like he could really benefit from a nice sweater, and I'd like to give him something, but I can't afford to give him something like we all wear. By myself, maybe you guys would like to pitch in, and each one gives $5, and we can give him at least $15 or $20 worth of towards a $25 sweater. And the other $5 he'll come up with, something. You know what I'm saying? Something. I got to get a few people together.